Hello there, it's Juliana Michaels and welcome to my channel. In this video I'm sharing 5 ways to use the new Simon Hurley Solar Sprays. If you love adding a touch of shimmer and shine to your projects, then these sprays are for you. I myself am completely smitten by them. If you're interested in any of the products I'm using in this video, you can find the supply list with links in the description box below. Just click on more to see more. When you shop through those links, you're supporting me at no extra cost to you, and I really appreciate that so very much. In this video, I'm going to be focusing on sharing some ways to use the new Simon Hurley Solar Spray. And it comes in 6 colors. I'm unfortunately missing one of the colors. It's more of a pink color called Cross My Heart, but it comes in Royal Flush, which is a really beautiful purple color, Overheated, which is kind of a reddish color, reddish orange, Golden Hour, which is more of a golden yellow color, Crocodile Tears, this is a green, and then Beluga, which is in a blue. And the solar sprays are a pearlescent, like marbleizing spray that is really subtle on white cardstock and then much more intense and will reveal more of its marbleizing pearlescence on a black or dark colored cardstock. So along with the sprays, I have some other supplies here that I'm going to be working with. I've got some embossing ink. I'll be using some texture paste in black and then the regular white texture paste. I've got some Sizzix luster wax in silver. I've got embossing powder in black and bubbly. You'll also need a paintbrush and a palette knife or like a credit card or something that you can like apply the paste with. I'll be working with this Tim Holtz Deco leaf stencil, and I also am going to be working with this Simon Hurley Creates handwritten stamp set and the Tim Holtz Floral Trim stamp set. And then the paper I'm going to be working with is the Distress Black Heavy Stock. You just want some kind of paper that can be used with a liquid medium such as sprays. So another option if you don't have the black heavy stock could also be the scrapbook.com mixed media paper as well. And then as far as the supplies I use to finish the card, I've just got a variety of stamps and dies that I used for that. So I have this Tim Holtz Sizzix butterfly embossing folder, and it's number 665251. The Spellbinders Typewriter Adventure Sentiments, the Tim Holtz Adorned die set, and this is the Media Marks die set, the Perspective Butterfly die set, and then the Concord and Ninth Big Type Greetings dies. Again, I'll have all of these supplies listed in the description box below. Some of these older dies might not be available, but feel free to look through your stash and find something similar. Now let's get into the making. So for this first card, I'm going to take a piece of the black craft stock, and I'm going to be working with the Golden Hour Solar Spray. And so this is just kind of a yellow color. And before you ever begin working with these, you want to make sure you mix them up really well. There's a little mixing ball inside. And as you can see right now, I haven't shaken this one at all, and all that pigment from the mica and everything is on the bottom here, and you just really want to shake this up really well until you get all that mixed in. I recommend kind of shaking side to side so that you don't have any of the liquid accidentally kind of come back up and out of the cap area. Kind of find that you minimize that likelihood if you just shake side to side. And then you just want to kind of turn the bottle around until all that, so you can tell and make sure all that liquid, see, it's still kind of clumpy down here, so I'm going to shake it just a little bit more. And so now you can see that all of that pigment is off the bottom and mixed in with the rest of the liquid. And now we're ready to give it a spray here. So now I'm just going to kind of spray this across the background of the paper. And I just love how this just kind of gets like a little bit of a marbly effect. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of water to it just to kind of make it flow a little bit more. I don't know, it's not necessarily something that you have to do, but just kind of gives it another kind of effect there. And I want a little bit more spray down here, so I'm just going to give another little spritz there. And then I'll just give this a dry. And kind of tilt that around and get that pigment to flow. But I definitely don't feel like you have to add the water. Like if you wanted to just spray this on and leave it as it was, I think it's really, really pretty. So definitely have some options there. And then I'm just using my heat tool here to dry that. But you can really see that marbling kind of effect, and obviously how shimmery and shiny it is. It's absolutely beautiful. And then just for a little bit of comparison, I'm going to just flip the same paper over and just do the spritzing on the back side and not do any water. And then we can kind of look at the two side by side a little bit here. So I'm just going to spritz that again. And give that a dry. So you can, add as much or as little as you want. The nature of this, it's not going to give you like a solid coverage because it tends to kind of do this kind of like marbling effect, and it kind of creates its own like texture in a way. So, I mean, that's what it's doing just by itself here. So there's without water. And then this is with the water added. So you just get more flowing of the pigments and mica there with the water versus without. Then the next step for this background is I'm going to take the Simon Hurley Handwritten stamp set, and I'm going to kind of use a little bit of temporary adhesive to help hold my paper in place here because the stamp is larger than my paper. And before you do this next step, because we're going to do some heat embossing, you just want to make sure your background is completely dry. So if you're worried about that, just give it another little run over with your heat tool. Once this is completely dry, the mica doesn't tend to rub off on your hands, but if it is still slightly damp, I've noticed that it does wipe off. So you just want to make sure you get it nice and dry. And then we'll place it into my stamping platform here. If you've got a sticky mat, you could also use a sticky mat instead of the adhesive. And then I'm just going to apply some embossing ink here to the stamp. Stamp that over onto the background here. And I'm just going to carefully pick this up and place it on top of a piece of printer paper. And now I'm going to apply some black embossing powder. I'm just going to pour that over the paper here. Tap off the excess. And then just turn that to the jar here. And then now I'm just going to use my heat gun to heat emboss this. And so there is a look at that background using just one of the sprays and some embossing ink and black embossing powder. And I don't know, just it's so elegant looking to me. So now for the second technique here, we're going to use multiple sprays. So I've got Beluga, Crocodile Tears, and Royal Flush. And again, you just want to make sure you get these shaken up really well and get all that pigment mixed in so that it's not, settled on the bottom at all. And then I'm just going to spritz this across the background here. Put a little bit of green up towards the top there. And This is the Beluga, and then this is Royal Flush. Over that a little bit. So they do tend to, like when they're wet, they'll kind of mix with each other just a little bit. But I don't find that they like completely cover each other up when you spray over them. So I think that part of it is really beautiful to give you kind of that beautiful kind of gradation of color here, since I kind of went in rainbow order. And you also might notice I'm wiping off the tips of the nozzle here every time after I spray, and that's just to try to help prevent it from clogging. Making sure you have everything mixed really well is also another kind of important thing to do to help with preventing the clogging. Now I'm just going to give this a quick dry here. So again, as you can see, this is really not intended to give you like a solid coverage of color. It's really meant to create this kind of beautiful pearlescent marbling effect, and I'll be honest, it's just stunning, and that's like with no water. That's just the inks by themselves, and I think it's just gorgeous. And I know I keep saying that, but it is so stunning, and in real life, I mean, I don't think the camera even picks up how beautiful it really is. So now again, I'm going to do some stamping here on the background, and I'm going to again use these kind of script stamp here, and I'm just going to ink that up with some embossing ink. And I do find it kind of works better to use stamps that are like have more open areas, because when you try to use a stamp that has more text or images on it, it ends up kind of covering up the background, which I feel like, well, for me anyway, I don't want to cover up too much of this because it's just so beautiful. So now I've got the bubbly embossing powder. I'm just going to pour that over. And again, before you do the powder, you just want to make sure that your background is nice and dry. Otherwise, the powder is likely to stick in some areas maybe where you don't want it to. So if that happens, just grab a little brush, and then you brush that off. And now I'm just going to heat emboss this. Now I'm going to add a little bit more stamping with this floral image from the Tim Holtz Floral Trim stamp. I'm just going to place that along this side here. And then I'm going to just repeat that same process with the embossing ink and the embossing powder. And so there is a look at that finished with the heat embossing and the stamping. And when it comes to picking what color of embossing powder to work with, I personally would kind of play around with it a little bit. A translucent embossing powder is not going to show up because of the colors behind there, but it would give you some texture if you wanted to use like some embossing glaze. But just regular embossing powder works beautifully, as you can see. I think it's more what sort of stamp that you use that's going to still allow you to see that beautiful shimmery background while adding just another layer of interest to the design. Now for the next technique, I'm going to take again another piece of that black craft stock, and I've got a stencil here and then some black texture paste. And I'm just going to apply some of that here through the stencil onto the background. And then just going to peel that up and then just kind of scoot it over here and apply a little more paste down across this lower corner. And then you just want to make sure you get the stencil in some water so that the paste doesn't dry on there. And then you can just set this to the side and let this dry, or you can use your heat tool to speed up the drying if you want. So if you're like me, you also probably wondered what regular texture paste would do with the spray and on the black cardstock. So I also applied some of that to a panel of the paper as well. So I've got the black and the white texture paste. And let's do the black first. And the colors here I'm going to be working with on the spray are Crocodile, Tears, and Beluga. And again, you just want to make sure you mix those up really well and get all that pigment mixed in. And now I'm just going to spritz some of the Beluga onto the paper here and kind of give it a good coverage of it. Kind of get it all over that paste area for sure. And then I'm going to give that a dry. And now I'm going to add some of the Crocodile Tears. I'm going to actually kind of layer it over this one, kind of show you how that looks. And how, like, they don't, it's kind of interesting, like it really doesn't want to like layer over another color from what I can tell. But then it kind of does, so it's interesting how they interact with each other when you layer them. So you can see there's some of the green showing through, but definitely more of the blue is visible still. I'm going to add a little bit more green here through the middle. Just kind of see what happens as we layer more of that color on here. And now you can see, like, now that I've added a little more of that green, it definitely layered on top of the blue. But you can still see some of the blue shining through. So I think that just kind of is part of the nature again of these sprays because of that kind of marbling effect that you get with them. And then with the paste paste kind of soaks the spray up a little bit, so it's not going to act as a resist here, but instead just kind of like the spray kind of gathers in the like details of the stencil, and just really the stencil with the paste I think adds just a nice bit of texture. So now let's try that with the white paste and see what happens. Let it dry. Now we'll add a little bit of the Crocodile Tears. Give that a dry. So here you can see on the white paste, you really just get a very subtle shimmer from the paste soaking up some of that spray. And that's just the nature of these sprays. I mean, they're going to be very subtle on anything that's white. So obviously, whether it's white texture paste or if you spray this onto white cardstock, you're going to get very minimal color. You're still going to get some shimmer, but not color like you see here on the black, where it's really definitely more obvious that there's that spray over the black texture paste. Either way, I think it creates a beautiful and stunning background. So now we're going to do some painting with the sprays, and here I've got just an embossed die cut, and then I'm going to use the Crocodile Tears and Beluga, and then I've got a paintbrush and then a little paint palette here. And the main thing you want to do again is make sure you get this mixed up really well. So I do find that the pigment tends to settle pretty quickly. It does mix back in pretty fast if you've been working with it. But again, just make sure you mix it in really well. And then I'm just going to pour just a tiny little bit into the palette. Pour a little bit of that in there. And then before you paint, you're going to want to mix that in. You can kind of see, like when you mix it, you can see the pearlescence, and then it settles down really quickly. So just mix that in real good, and then just start painting it onto your die cut or whatever sort of piece you want to do some painting with. You could also do this with like stamped images. And if you wanted to stamp, you know, a butterfly and maybe even like heat emboss it. And then paint it in with the sprays. That would be really pretty. And I'll do the same thing, add a little bit of the green, get that mixed in real good. And then from there, then if you can just give that a little bit of a dry, and if you want to add a little more here and there, you can. Then we'll just give that a good dry. And then, you know, if you're finding that you're getting like a more of a milky white, you might not have had it mixed in really well. So again, just make sure that you got it mixed up really well. Otherwise, you do kind of tend to lose some of that shimmeriness. And then you can kind of use your heat tool to just dry this. And it's going to take a little bit of time to dry because we were painting it on and it, you know, it's kind of getting it on there thicker. But as you can see, like, I mean, you still don't get like a full total solid cover of color. And that's just the nature of the spray. It's not meant to give you solid coverage. And then once it's dry, you know, it's not going to rub off on your hands. So just want to make sure it's fully dry. While it's wet, it will rub off, but once it's dry, it won't. And then the last thing I'm going to do here, just to add a little bit of interest, is I've got some Sizzix luster wax. This is just a beeswax based wax that has a metallic color. And I like to just kind of get it some on my gloved hand. I don't like to work with this with bare skin. Not that it will hurt you, but it's just hard to clean off. And kind of get it smoothed out nice and like a smooth layer of it onto my finger there. And then just very lightly rub over the surface to transfer that over. Doesn't take a lot. A little goes a long way. You're just trying to hit the raised edges of the die cut to add just a little bit of interest there. Kind of reveal that embossed detail just a little bit more. And then as far as cleaning up the wax, you can just use a little bit of rubbing alcohol. That will clean it up really quickly. And then there is a look at the finished embellishment with the painting with the sprays. Here's a look at each of the finished cards I created with the backgrounds and the embellishment that I created in the video. For detailed photos and more information, feel free to visit my website using the link in the description box below. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed learning 5 ways to use Simon Hurley Solar Sprays. Until next time, stay crafty, my friend.